Aboard Air Force One, the steady hum of the engines fills the press cabin. Cameras click and recorders roll. US President Donald Trump, seated across from a small group of reporters, leans forward slightly, a half smile breaking across his face. He says, "It's pretty clear that I'm not eligible to run." The room pauses, a moment of candor from a president whose every word carries global consequence. Then he adds, almost wistfully, "It's a shame. I mean, it's a shame. But we have a lot of great people," that short remark, delivered somewhere high above the Pacific Ocean as Air Force One made its descent towards South Korea, rippled instantly across the world. It wasn't just a procedural acknowledgement of the US Constitution's two-term limit. It was a rare moment of reflection from a leader defined by relentless motion, a man who thrives on challenge, conflict, and headlines. Reporters on board quickly shared the exchange, and within minutes, networks flashed the quote across their banners: "Trump, not eligible to run for a third term." For many, the statement carried both political finality and strategic intrigue. Was this a concession to constitutional reality or the opening line of a new chapter in Trump's global narrative? As Air Force One sliced through the clouds toward Gyeongju, the symbolism was hard to miss. The city, ancient capital of Korea's Silla dynasty, was about to host the APEC Summit, where leaders from across the Pacific Rim would meet to discuss trade, energy, and peace. For Trump, it was both a diplomatic mission and a farewell tour of sorts, a chance to shape the legacy of an administration that redefined US engagement with Asia. Inside the aircraft, the president's mood appeared reflective, even nostalgic. "I have the best numbers for a president in many years," he told the reporters, "and I would say if you read it, it's pretty clear that I'm not allowed to run for a third term. It's too bad. But we have a lot of great people." His tone mixed pride with inevitability, an acknowledgement that even the most dominant figures must one day pass the baton. The line, "We have a lot of great people," sparked immediate speculation in Washington and beyond. Analysts and insiders debated who those great people might be. Some pointed toward his vice president and senior cabinet members. Others suggested the remark hinted at a broader succession plan, a new generation of conservatives shaped by Trump's political philosophy, but ready to carry it forward in their own image. By the time Air Force One touched down at Gyeongju Airport, flashes lit the tarmac. The aircraft's iconic blue and white livery gleamed beneath the late autumn sky. Cameras zoomed in as the stairs unfolded and the presidential seal came into view. Moments later, Trump emerged, waving to a small crowd of US and South Korean officials gathered at the base of the steps. The scene was both familiar and symbolic, a leader stepping into history, aware that his time on the ballot was ending, but his influence was far from over. Across Seoul and Washington, political analysts passed his every word. "It's a shame," he had said, a phrase that struck many as revealing. It wasn't the defiant tone that once defined his campaign rallies. It was quieter, almost reflective, yet behind that tone lay the unmistakable message of continuity. Even if he couldn't seek another term, Trump was signaling that his movement and his brand of politics would remain central to America's future. For Trump supporters, the moment carried the weight of legacy. In his 2 terms, he had redrawn America's global alliances, shifted the center of economic gravity toward Asia, and positioned US trade policy as a tool for peace rather than just profit. His fair tariff approach, linking economic leverage to diplomatic stability, had become a cornerstone of his administration's foreign policy. For critics, however, his statement only reignited debates about the durability of democratic norms and how Trump's tenure had stretched and sometimes strained the boundaries of presidential power. At the APEC Summit venue in Gyeongju, preparations were in full swing. Red carpets unrolled across the marble floors. Delegations rehearsed protocol sequences. Trump's arrival was timed to coincide with a private dinner hosted by South Korean President Lee Jae-myung, a moment of ceremony and symbolism. Yet the conversation aboard Air Force One still hung in the air. Reporters following the trip noted that Trump seemed intent on shaping how history would remember him. His reference to the best numbers for any president wasn't just bravado. It was a narrative anchor, a reminder that in his view, his presidency had delivered both stability and success. "If you read it," he said, "it's pretty clear I'm not allowed to run." That phrase, "if you read it," became a subject of fascination among commentators, a blend of irony and challenge from a president who often framed legal limits as negotiable, but now accepted them with almost theatrical finality. In the hours that followed, reactions poured in. Supporters online hailed his statement as graceful and forward-looking, proof that he respected the constitutional process while remaining confident in his achievements. Opponents, meanwhile, read it as a farewell act of self-promotion, a leader taking credit one last time before history rendered its verdict. But beyond the politics, the visual power of that day was undeniable. Air Force One against the Korean skyline, the motorcade winding through Gyeongju's lantern-lit streets, and the president, older, seasoned, yet unmistakably in command, walking toward his next diplomatic test. For South Korea, hosting Trump carried both prestige and pressure. The United States remained its principal security guarantor, and Trump's visit, despite its introspective tone, underscored the enduring alliance between Washington and Seoul. Behind closed doors, the two sides discussed trade facilitation, energy cooperation, and the future of North Korea diplomacy, a subject that had defined much of Trump's earlier foreign policy spotlight. Back in Washington, political chatter accelerated. Cable networks looped the quote repeatedly, dissecting every word. Former officials debated whether Trump's phrasing suggested the end of an era or the beginning of a new power structure within the Republican Party. His mention of great people became an invitation for speculation. Who would inherit his political mantle, and how would his influence endure once he stepped off the world stage? Meanwhile, in the press cabin of Air Force One, the conversation moved on. Staffers briefed journalists on the upcoming summit, while Trump reviewed briefing papers and trade figures. Yet the mood remained distinct, quieter, almost reflective. For a president known for his relentless pace and uncompromising energy, this was a rare pause, a moment suspended between past victories and future uncertainty. Analysts later described that brief exchange as emblematic of Trump's unique approach to power, a blend of showmanship and strategy, candid emotion intertwined with calculated messaging. Even as he conceded constitutional limits, he used the moment to reaffirm his dominance over political discourse. By acknowledging the rule, he defined its boundaries on his own terms. As night fell over Gyeongju, the president's convoy arrived at the convention hall. The ancient city, once seat of kings, glowed under spotlights and digital projections. Inside, diplomats mingled beneath banners reading "Shared Prosperity, Connected Future." It was a fitting theme for a summit meant to bridge economies and ideologies across the Pacific, and for a president keen to cast his legacy in those same terms. Trump's arrival drew attention not only for the geopolitical agenda, but for its timing. With just months left in his second term, every appearance now carried the weight of history. His remarks aboard Air Force One had set the tone, a recognition that his personal chapter might be closing, but his influence on America's global posture would continue through those great people he spoke of. Throughout the dinner, cameras captured moments of informal exchange, handshakes, toasts, quiet smiles between leaders. Off camera, aides described a president focused on long-term strategy, trade corridors linking the US and Southeast Asia, technology partnerships in AI and energy, and the role of American leadership in maintaining peace through strength. For Trump, this was not a farewell. It was the framing of a legacy, one he hoped would define the 21st century balance of power. Outside, South Korean crowds lined the streets, waving both American and Korean flags. Many remembered Trump's earlier visits, his calls for fair trade and stronger defense cooperation. For them, his statement about not running again marked the end of an era, but also the affirmation that America's engagement with Asia would remain constant, even as leadership evolved. By the time midnight approached, the story had circled the globe. From Washington to London, Tokyo to Canberra, headlines echoed the same phrase: Trump not eligible for third term. But behind the simplicity of those words lay a complex story, one of ambition, legacy, and the constant recalibration of power. Back in his suite later that night, Trump reportedly reviewed clips of the day's coverage. To some aides, he appeared amused by the intensity of the media response. "It's interesting," he had said earlier, "I have the best numbers for any president in many years." That confidence, equal parts conviction and theatre, remained intact. Even in acknowledgement of limits, Trump had found a way to dominate the global narrative once more. In the corridors of diplomacy, few moments pass quietly. Every word, every phrase becomes part of a greater mosaic of intent and influence. Trump's airborne remark, delivered without script or podium, captured precisely that tension between the constraints of law and the reach of legacy, between the stillness of reflection and the drive to shape tomorrow. As dawn broke over Gyeongju, Air Force One rested on the tarmac, its engines cooled, its mission complete for the day. The world's attention shifted to the summit halls, where trade ministers and presidents prepared for a new round of talks. Yet the echoes of that single sentence still lingered. It's pretty clear that I'm not eligible to run. In that acknowledgement lay both finality and foresight, the closing of one chapter and the quiet beginning of another. Whether history records it as resignation or strategy, one thing is certain. Aboard Air Force One that day, Donald Trump once again managed to turn a routine flight into a defining moment of political theatre. And as the cameras faded and the engines stilled, the image remained. A president looking forward, not back, shaping his legacy, one line, one headline, one flight at a time.